Have you ever gotten killed by someone who is at an angle that you did not expect at all? Do you know how to get an advantage in duels over enemies? We've all been there. I think we've all experienced one of those games where no matter where we try to go, someone is always in some off angle shooting us in the side of the head. And even if we're not the ones getting shot, our teammates definitely are. Off angles are an often undervalued and underused tool for getting picks, and knowing how to abuse off angles can easily net you man advantages. What is going on, ProGuides family? It is your host Sergeant Frost, and today we'll be teaching you what off angles are and how you can use them to get free kills in game. So let's jump right into it and get started. So to start off, it's a good idea to first know what off angles are for those who aren't familiar, and maybe refresh it for people who know about them. People have been using off angles since games categorized as FPS games started existing. An off angle is any angle that strays away from the standard expectations, that trades safety or other advantages in order to catch an opponent off guard. So now that we know what an off angle is, what's a non-off angle? Usually we would call it a standard angle, since we can define it as any angle where you could typically expect an enemy, being a strong angle or common angle to fight from. But that description is hard to really picture without some specifics. So let's cover some examples to help you understand it even more. In this clip, we can see that Jett is on a standard angle. When Raze is clearing up A main, she will expect an enemy on this angle and be prepared, making it easy for Raze to duel Jett. If Raze clears properly, she should have an equal or slightly advantageous duel due to ping advantage and preparation. However, in this example, when Raze clears the spot where Jett was in the last clip, the so-called standard angle, Jett will place slightly offset to the angle instead. This is a prime example of an off angle. Agents like Jett, Reyna, and Chamber can use off angles pretty well, since if Reyna kills, she can get away and Jett and Chamber can TP dash to safety after taking a shot, even if they don't net the kill. If you don't play either of these agents, you are probably wondering, are off angles useless for other agents? The short answer is no, but we'll cover more of this in depth as we go along. So if you're not an agent with mobility options, don't worry too much. Okay, now that you have an idea of what an off angle is, we should also take a look at what makes an off angle strong. After all, if you don't know the strengths, then you won't know how to abuse it to its maximum potential. Now let's watch the POV of Jett in a strong off angle. As you can see, Jett is playing even more passive than the previous example. Pay attention to Raze now. When Raze clears A ramp and A main, she will most likely try to progress towards site. When she approaches the site, she will open herself up to a lot of standard angles like rafters, CT, and elbow potentially. Since enemies are more often in those positions, she will clear an angle like A rafters. When this happens, it's the only time Jett is visible to Raze, but Raze will be preoccupied clearing the other angles and therefore give Jett an opportunity to take a pick. With good crosshair placement from Jett, this is theoretically a safe and easy kill. She should be able to get this kill for free without any contest from the enemy. Not only can she get a pick, she can also dash afterwards into safety, netting a 5 versus 4 situation with just good positioning and a dash. I'm sure you guys all know this, but this has a huge impact on how the round would eventually play out. We can also use off angles to get strong map control without being over aggressive or going for a standard duel. When you win this power position and no one contests you for a while, you can call your teammates to rotate. Not only will your team have a stronger sight hold on the other parts of the map, if they rush you after a while, you can still play retake after taking an opening pick without putting yourself at a big risk. By taking a strong off angle, you've helped your team get a strong defensive setup on B side while also securing enough map control to make A side significantly more dangerous for the enemy to take. It's a win-win situation. Keep in mind that every strong off angle should help you win duels against enemies while they are not suspecting where you are playing. But of course, that also means you need to hit your shots when given the opportunity, as if you don't get the kill, you still need to use your escape tools often to get out of your positions. If you are not winning most of your duels, don't worry. Let's focus now on some concepts that will even provide you with a bigger advantage when you're trying to play an off angle. I know this is about off angles, but we have to stress that crosshair placement is a massively important aspect that you need to really take advantage of off angles. Some of you may already know about it from experience of our past videos, but in order to have good crosshair placement, you will have to focus on two things. 1. Predicting how the enemy will peek into you, and 2. Factoring in your own reaction time. Keep in mind that the goal of good crosshair placement is to minimize the amount of adjustments you have to make to hit a shot. The better you are at factoring your reaction time, the less you'll have to flick and more consistent you will be overall. But of course, don't worry if you are still flicking, as crosshair placement is a hard skill to master at all levels. The fundamental goal of crosshair placement is surprisingly to aim less. The less you have to aim, the more consistent you can be. Okay, so now that you know how to have good crosshair placement, let's focus on another mistake some players make. This concept is angle advantages, and it's all about being aware of your agent. Have you ever gotten shot by an enemy without being able to see them? The reason for this is often due to how angles work in game and even in real life. If you are very close to a wall, your body will show for the people beyond it, but you won't be able to see them. So even if you are at an off angle, they will see you first, and you will be the one at a disadvantage. The further you are away from a wall, the better. as you'll see more of their body before they see you. Being aware of the angle advantage is very important for judging whether an angle is actually good to hold or not. So now that we have most of the basics out of the way, let's talk a bit about how you can benefit from off angles on defender side first and later on attacker side. On defender side, most of the time when holding a site, even if you're playing other agents that don't benefit as much from off angles, you can still use off angles to your advantage. The way that people hold off angles with agents that can't get out of more aggressive positions is to be on the side where you can still back off. This way, you're committing to taking one advantageous duel and then making an escape. In this clip, we can see that Killjoy gets 1 pick, 2 picks while the enemies are not looking at him. At the same time, Killjoy is able to isolate the duel on Raze as well, since Raze is trying to push into the Killjoy with the satchel. If the Raze didn't satchel onto the Killjoy after the first kill, the Killjoy could have simply backed up into heaven. The only difference about this angle compared to the previous example with Jett is that they can get onto site without the Killjoy knowing. This is usually why agents that have escape tools will have higher impact with off angles, but as you can see, other agents can very well do the same. Additionally, if the Killjoy has a turret spotting A main, this would work since they can't cross without Killjoy knowing as well. We know how defenders can gain advantages with off angles, but getting a pick on attacker side using off angles can often feel counterintuitive since you're the one pushing into the defenders. But of course, there's still a place for off angles on the attacker side as well. As we all know, the space between spawn barriers is often contested space. Enemy defenders will often try to go for a pick now and then. That's why the way you create an off angle on attacker side is totally different. If you think the enemy is going aggressive and around, you can get a good timing by pushing slightly past the spawn barrier and holding from where they'll come from, as presented in this clip. It's a good idea to know spawn timings in this case, but this principle works for any situation where you're expecting a push. On that same note, you can also use an off angle to hold for flanks. Generally, when you're holding a flank, you're waiting for your team to fake control elsewhere, or your team is running a default to gain information or control of the map. Since defenders most likely won't run while flanking, it's very easy to get a pick on any greedy defenders trying to sneak behind your back lines. We now know almost all about off angles and we are ready to get some free real estate, but not so fast. Although off angles are powerful and can catch an opponent off guard, it's important to know the weaknesses of off angles as well to either counter them or to know when it's not a good idea to run an off angle. Even if you catch opponents off guard more often, your position is also practically weaker for reasons such as having a harder time escaping, being forced to commit to a fight, or being susceptible to trades. That means an off angle is also a double-edged sword, as opponents who have the read can use utility to catch you out in the open as well. For example, initiators like Sova or Skye can make it very hard for you to play off angles, mostly because of their ability to gather information with a drone or a dog. In some cases, even a pop flash could put you in a very bad position where you're in the middle of nowhere without a good way to escape. Is there anything we can do about these counters? Of course, it's very simple, but requires you to ask for your teammates' help. Before the round starts, communicate what you are going to do and ask one of your teammates if they can break their scout abilities before they can get close to the off angle you're holding. This way, they won't be able to detect you and they might even get baited by seeing your teammate in another position. In some scenarios, you can also call your teammates to play off your contact. So even if you get traded, your teammate might be able to trade you and maintain good advantage over the enemy team. Playing aggressive angles can be advantageous in this case, as you give your teammates room to trade you while you're escaping. But this strategy is mostly for Jett, Chamber, or Reyna, since all three have abilities to escape. Playing a more offensive angle with the other agents is also possible, but as you can guess, a lot more risky. You want to decide if the risk is worth it, as in some cases you are guaranteed to get traded out, while in other cases you might be able to escape for free since there's only one enemy there. And of course, you'll want to compare this with your chances if you simply just held site and played crossfires. Last but not least, you want to remain unpredictable. If the enemy suspects that you are playing a certain angle no matter how good it is, they will look at you and possibly even pre-fire you. To avoid this, you'll want to change your positions up often and probably only use an off angle maybe once or twice a match. After all, the biggest strength of an off angle is the unpredictability. So if you don't have that, then off angles are strictly worse than standard angles. And of course, that concludes our off angles guide. Hopefully this guide was helpful to not only understand off angles more, but to maybe come up with some ideas to use them in your ranked games. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you want to keep up to date with the latest Valorant news, updates, and guides. It's been Sergeant Frost, and good luck on the grind this act.